Hello and welcome back to the Casual Fanatic. Today we continue the series, Three Key Men. Today's team, Brentford. Now this is a team that I've been looking forward to doing because one, manager's Danish, loads of Danish players in the squad, general other Scandinavians as well in and around the squad, and it's a very interesting project that you've seen there because they're one of the lowest wage bills in the entire league. Right here, they're on 33. They pay 33 million in yearly wages, which brings me into the first player and the most important. It's very obvious with Brentford, but that's the goal scorer, Ivan Toney. Here's where Brentford start to have an issue, and I'm going to start with the issue before I go into the positive of it. Ivan Toney's on 20,000 a week, a million a year. Now, the temptations and the offers that are going to be coming in the summer for Ivan Toney is going to be huge. And how do Brentford keep a hold of him? Now, I'm going to go off the basis of what's happened this season and also the fact that I hope they keep him for the following season. And because you're kind of seeing a lot of clubs either have their center forward or they're going for that next bracket of striker, aka Chelsea probably going for an Osimhen, or they generally have a lot of strikers anyway, and attack forward players. I wouldn't say strikers, they don't have strikers, but forward players. And United looking at Kane, Osimhen, Gonzalo Ramos, all of those players. So if we go on the assumption that Toney's staying, he's been one of the huge, most important factors for Brentford, both in his hold-up play. You saw him dominate big teams away from home multiple times that Brentford have been able to do it, as well as the fact that in all of those small games, his penalty conversion, of course, has been elite, but he's been able to finish his chances. Because Brentford are third in the league in goals per shots. That's a huge, important factor for Brentford, who are a team that don't create a lot of chances. And they don't have a consistent method of creation through a build-up structure. It's more through individual player quality. In Mbeumo, who's basically their only ball carrier, and Ivan Toney being their one target man who's then able to facilitate everything around them, allowing from Mbeumo to run off him, allowing Jensen to link up with him. And then when they do play in the 3-5-2, which they do alternate between the 4-3-3 and the 3-5-2, he's able to allow the wing backs to get those creation as well. Like Greco Henry has a couple ball carries as well. But for a team like Brentford, where they're fifth bottom in possession, yet they're ninth in the league, and realistically, they could push onwards, but they looked at times during the season, other than their recent run, which has been very surprising, but they've kind of dropped off and tailored off in form. They have had a tougher run of games, so you can't be too harsh against them. But it is tough to see a way for Brentford now to move up. This is a good spot. This is a good building season if they make the right signings. I think they could maintain this kind of spot and maybe push on to fight for a Europa Conference League. But they have really taken advantage of a weaker season from a Tottenham, Liverpool, Chelsea, those kind of teams. Now, they average the third most long balls in the league. They have the second fewest short passes and third fewest medium range passes. That tells you a very clear thing. They're a team that's built on defensive solidity that then plays it long to try to win those aerial duels, because they do lead the league in aerial duel win percentages. And that's where they play it long, win those knockdown balls, and they create through transitions. And they do that at an elite level. And that's why, for me, this Brentford team has been fun to watch. And it's always an interesting matchup, because if they maintain that defensive rigidity, this team is dangerous and they can hurt you, especially with Mbeumo and Ivan Toney. And this is where my most promising player is Mbeumo. Age factor obviously being a huge one. They don't have a lot of young players. There's a few littered here and there in the squad. But in terms of a key figure in the team, it is Mbeumo. And it is how they keep that partnership together as long as possible in Ivan Toney and Mbeumo. Now, Thomas Frank has been able to adapt over the years. That I think he's been in Brentford for, 5 years? He's been able to adapt over that time, transitioning through different forwards and different attackers. But this has been the most successful period that they've had. And this has been the most successful combination that they've been able to employ. And that's why I think it's crucial that they keep them together. Now, in terms of Brentford and where they go from here, I think you have like one of two ways. Either they turn into a team that starts to turn over players for profit, and then over time try and build another young squad to be able to compete and push on. Or they try and stick with what they have and add the inexperience to try and maybe push into Europa Conference League and then see where they move from there. It's that purgatory of middle of the table teams that don't have big budgets or big budget owners behind them. So in Aston Villa, you have chance to kick on. Newcastle, you have chance to kick on. Now, Brighton a little bit ahead in the project to Brentford because they've been doing it for a longer time in the Premier League, and they have shown that the model works. Of, hey, let's produce these players. Let's have a very talented scout system and a specific profile of players. And you then are able to turn them over into bigger money for the club, and you're still able to stay competitive due to that scouting system set in place. Now, Brentford clearly have a strategy of targeting the Scandinavian markets, and it makes sense. It's what Thomas Frank knows. It's a market that he has a competitive advantage over some other managers and other clubs. And I think that's important for them to take advantage of that, especially with the emergence of so many young, top Scandinavian players. I think if they can get their hands on a couple of the next gems of the next generation, I think there's something there in that Brentford system. There's something there in the Brentford club. Now, they do and will always have a problem with the fact that they have the second lowest attendance. They have the second smallest stadium. I think it's 17,000 they average per game. Only Bournemouth less, like 10,000. The Vitality gets popping though. But in terms of Brentford, their recommended signing. Now, I struggle with this one because I thought, hey, maybe you get someone other than Nurgle to partner Jensen, because Jensen has been probably he's definitely been their most important midfielder, but probably their second most important player after Ivan Toney. Maybe David Raya can make a claim because second highest in save percentage, and he's made the most saves. So it's high volume and still keeping that save percentage. But I think the best thing now, when you look at the age profiles, Jensen is looking older, Ben Mee is older, and Ben Mee's been a revelation for them this season. But they're going to need to start transitioning into another generation of younger players that are going to come in and fill those roles. Because those guys are not going to be along. And a lot of time with players at that age, there can be a steep drop of the cliff, fall off in performance and level. And they cannot afford that. Because if Brentford have a weak back line, they fall down. They plummet down the table. Because they don't have the volume of goals. They have scored 50 goals this season, which is more than United. So me saying they don't have volume of goals is not exactly accurate. But it's based on the defensive ability, right? Brentford need their defense to be solid to be able to build up. They rely heavily on those long passes. And the recommended signing I'm going to make is not the highest level of passer, not the most technically secure player, but he's someone that they can work on. And the reason I'm recommending him is because I think he deserves to stay in the Prem. I think he's good enough to stay in the Premier League level. I think there's been flashes of a real potential player there. I don't think, though, the bigger clubs will be picking him up yet. I don't think it's worth the risk and worth the money that you'd be bringing in to kind of keep him as a rotational option. Now, the player I'm talking about is Arnold Bella-Kotchap. Bella-Kotchap is someone that plays for Southampton. He will get relegated with them, and that means there's a budget signing there for someone to go get because he deserves to stay in the Premier League. Now the question is who picks him up, and I think this is someone that Brentford need to look at. One, you can fit him in and cover the technical inability through playing 3-back system. Of course, he has the size. You can work on the shot blocking that is essential for Brentford's style of play. And in terms of the clearances and interceptions, he ranks in the 93 percentile and the 98 percentile in the league this season. That's great for Brentford. That's something that they can add as a defensive bonus. Now, he isn't a centre-back that he's going to come in and you're going to immediately be like, wow, this is the technical centre-back that we've needed to elevate the game. But what he is someone that comes in, can fill in, can operate in the same level as a defensive action player as the ones that are already available. And then along the when Ben Mee moves on, when Janssen moves on, you have someone that's there that you've worked with for a long period of time. And I think it's someone that also, if he comes back into the Premier League and has a big year, that's someone you can flip again for money. And now you can, if you probably can get him for 15 to 20 million this summer, I think it's worth it. I know it's big money for a club the size of Brentford, but I think this is the signing that, hey, we can secure that centre-back role. And the good thing is, if he works out, you can either you have your centre-back locked down or you can sell him on for profit. And I think that's a positive thing for Brentford right now. I love the way the club is going. I think there's a lot of positives to be seen here at Brentford. I do think they need to start maybe finding another way to adjust their style of play just to have another edge over some of the teams lower down the table, because playing their way of football is risky, especially when you're playing teams further down. You cannot just give up possession all the time against some of the lower teams with less quality, because especially that you're getting some teams coming in from the championship. This year's been a weird year where every team has these technical quality players, so you've kind of gotten away with it because every team kind of wants to impose their game plan, and then some of the teams have a complete breakdown in structures, and you've been able to take advantage of that. But next year, if teams are finding their more defined way of playing, the question is if they start losing some of those technical players, because they're not going to want to stick around in relegation battles. It's a difficult thing. A lot of those guys are going to start moving up the next bracket, the best ones of the low bunch, and that's why we've had a weird Premier League season. Next year is probably not going to be the same way, because that's just how football works. The better quality players, the lower division, move up. And once that happens, Brentford are going to need to find a way to break those teams down and not be put in a situation where they're completely relying on beating teams that are quote-unquote better than them or more higher quality technical teams. I do think there's a lot to be positive about Brentford. I like the aim, the transition of from them coming in from the championship and how they've transitioned their football into the Premier League. I think it's been effective. I love what Thomas Frank is doing. I think they should stick by their coach. Yes, there's going to be some negative results. There's going to be some downticks in form, but that's that's part and parcel of being in the Premier League mid-table. And I think they need to have a consistent 2 or 3 years finishing in that kind of area of the league. And I think this is a real club that could be a staple in the Premier League. And I'd love them to be. And I'd love them to do it through the Scandinavian project, obviously close to home. And let's see what happens with Brentford. But those are my 3 key men. Ivan Toney, Mbeumo, and my recommended signing is Bella Kotchap. Let me know if there's anyone else you think that they should sign, they should go for. Let me know if there's someone else you wanted to point out that I didn't point out. And maybe a Rico Henry, a Hickey, any of those guys. And yeah, I'll see you on the next episode. Bye-bye.